Aloha. Well, I have been encouraged by some of the viewers to continue creepy Halloween stories. As I said last time around, I hate to repeat myself, so I'm kind of being careful about telling the same story over and over again. So, I had a request from a gentleman to tell a story that isn't actually one of my ghost stories. It's a ghost story I'd heard from a person here in the islands. As I had previously mentioned, Hawaii is one of the most haunted states. It's the ancestral cultural belief that the ancestors will hang around after they pass to watch over the living. So auntie and uncle will be here to watch over the kids. And I believe a lot of them do remain. I think you see this too in Catholic mythology. Grandpa's looking down from heaven over you. Well, anyway, because of that, there seems to be just a whole lot of haunted places here. Now, this story, again, is not mine, and I'm repeating it, and I'm hoping I'm getting the details correct, because it's from memory. But it is related to me because the place of the haunt is one that I frequent. It's actually one of my favorite restaurants here. It's about the Kilauea Lodge that's in Volcano. Kilauea Lodge was, many years ago, was a 4-H camp. It was well-built, nice place. The buildings are really pretty. They had a lot of cabins and things that were part of this, and the main building, with fireplace and all that. Volcano is high up in elevation. They're around 4,000 feet, so it actually gets cool in the winter up there. Anyway, eventually, 4-H camp gave the place up, and it ended up in private hands, and it was turned into a restaurant and a vacation cottage rental. It's a nice place. I really enjoy it. The cooking is particularly good. Their chef is awesome. Very well trained and with a German influence. It's very unusual cuisine. Anyway, that aside, we're talking about ghosts, and not the ghost of Adolf Hitler. So, the place had historically had a haunt. The haunt was apparently male. Now, it wasn't often seen by men who were at the cabins. It seemed to like to show itself to women guests. And so it was... it's cabin number 2, I believe, is the one where... most of the activity would go on, where this guy, Spectre, would be seen looking out of a particular window in this one particular cabin, and he'd do this when there were women renting the cabin, and he would watch the women from the window. Well, it was terrifying for the guests, since the man was ethereal. He wasn't actually there. People coming here for a nice vacation at Volcanoes National Park, and, hoping to enjoy their time, instead get the pants scared off of them by a spectral dude staring out of windows. Well, the story of who this guy is not particularly clear, but I think the assumption would be, since this particular area, the island, there would not have been any Hawaiian villages, nobody living there in particular area. The highland forests like that were generally kapu for the common people, and so he obviously predates the 4-H camp because he appears to be an ancient Hawaiian, is what people say of him. So the guess is this guy was probably one of the ancient Hawaiian bird catchers. Hawaiian royalty wore garb that was made out of these beautiful feathers from the honey creepers. And they had people who were employed who specifically went out to capture just the right birds to get the right feather colors. They still are a few people here on the islands that know how to work this art form and can put the feathers together into creations. So we're thinking that's probably who the guy was, because nobody else really would have been wandering around up there much in ancient times. There are a lot of honey creepers up around the volcanoes. So many birds, even yet today, the native birds are abundant up there. They're almost completely absent down low in our islands, but up high around the park, they're still up there. So anyway, the owners of the properties decided that this guy is bad for business. He didn't seem to cause anybody any harm, but, ghosts are terrifying. It turns out that exorcising spirits isn't something that most of the local indigenous cultural people do much with. And so it appears they had to go all the way over to Oahu to find a kahuna, Hawaiian shaman, whatever you want to call these guys. They're called kahunas. So they had to go all the way over to find one who could actually do an exorcism. Now, I do not have the particulars on how this type of exorcism is performed, but he came, he did his work, and since then, the bird catcher really hasn't been seen anymore. So we'll guess that this guy knew exactly what he was doing to remove spirits. But yeah, it's this particular ghost story, I thought it was a kind of a favorite of mine because, it has a happy ending, I guess. The guys moved on to wherever ancient bird catchers go to, and nobody else is being terrified by his presence. It also involves, a person who had the ability to remove spirits that really shouldn't have been there. It's an unusual talent. Very few of us know how to do that. We're all familiar with the Catholic exorcism, which actually very few Catholic priests undertake that. These days they usually work with modern psychologists to confirm that the victim who is possessed is not schizophrenic, that he actually is possessed. So we don't see much of it. It's kind of an interesting process. The restaurant is right there on the main street in Volcano, and I highly recommend it. If you're traveling here in the islands and you're up near Volcanoes National Park, in the town of Volcano, there are 2 restaurants you don't want to miss. And one of them is Kilauea Lodge. It's outstanding. They have a marvelous brunch, and their dinners are wonderful too. But then there's Cafe Ono. Ono is an artist. He's got a vegan cafe up there that, I don't necessarily, I'm not a vegan, but I will eat anything, and boy, I'll tell you, his vegan food, it's awesome, man. So, finish up a ghost story talking about my favorite restaurants. Maybe I took the edge off. Hope nobody's shuddering. Anyway, this one's got a happy ending. And like I say, if you're here in town, drop in at Kilauea Lodge. And maybe you remember the story, because he might still be around there somewhere. Who knows? Anglos, watch out for spooks.